On January 31st, 2025, after spending over 22 years on death row, Marion Bowman Jr. was executed by lethal injection at Broad River Correctional Institution in South Carolina. He had been sentenced to death in 2002 for the murder of Kandee Louise Martin, a 21-year-old woman whose body was found burned in the trunk of her own car. Bowman, who always proclaimed his innocence, spent his final days writing poetry and under constant surveillance. But the events of a cold February night in 2001 marked the beginning of the end. This documentary contains factual descriptions that may be sensitive to some viewers. It is presented with care, respect, and the intention to inform. Marion Bowman Jr. was born on June 6, 1980, in the town of Branchville, South Carolina. He grew up in an extremely dysfunctional family environment, with serious alcoholism issues on his mother's side. From a very young age, he was exposed to neglect, alcohol abuse, and a criminal environment. By the age of 10, he was regularly drinking alcohol, and by 14, he was actively involved in drug dealing, especially crack cocaine in his community. During the 1990s, he accumulated criminal records for offenses such as third-degree burglary and petty larceny. He was convicted and served a 2-year prison sentence, followed by 30 additional days in a boot camp-style correctional program before being released in the late 1990s. Despite being married, he maintained an on and off relationship with Kandee Louise Martin, whom he had known since childhood. Known as Kandee, their relationship included occasional sexual and drug-related encounters, as she was also a crack user and frequent buyer. His wife was pregnant at the time of his arrest, and 6 months later, their daughter was born. Bowman maintained strong ties with both during his years in prison. February 16, 2001 began as an ordinary day in Branchville until tensions between Marion and Kandee escalated irreversibly. That afternoon, while riding with his sister Yolanda and cousin Katrina, Bowman saw Kandee in her car talking to a man. He asked his sister to pull over and tried to get Kandee's attention from the back seat. Kandee told him to wait because she was in the middle of a conversation. That response enraged Bowman, who then loudly declared in front of witnesses, "That bitch is going to be dead before nightfall." That threat turned into reality. At 7:30 p.m., Kandee picked up Bowman and his cousin James Gadsden. They were supposedly heading to a party, but during the drive, Bowman asked her to detour onto Nursery Road, a remote and wooded area. Once there, he told Kandee to turn off the headlights. He got out of the car with James and walked a few steps. According to Gadsden, Bowman said he believed Kandee was wearing a wire and stated his intention to kill her. When they returned toward the car, Kandee stepped out and began walking down the road. Bowman followed closely behind her. Suddenly, he pulled out a gun and fired 3 shots. Kandee, wounded, ran toward James for help, then stopped, turned back to Bowman and pleaded, "Please don't shoot me anymore. I have a baby to take care of." Showing no mercy, Bowman fired 2 more times, killing her instantly. He dragged her body into the woods and returned to the car as if nothing had happened. Bowman drove Kandee's car around the city, tried to sell it outside a club, and picked up other people throughout the night. During that time, he also bragged about the crime to another person, Hiram Johnson. At 3 a.m., he went to Travis Felder's house. Together, they returned to Nursery Road. Bowman went into the woods, dragged Kandee's body back to the car, and placed it in the trunk. He then doused the vehicle with flammable liquid, lit it on fire, and watched it burn. "You didn't think I'd do it, did you? I killed Kandee Martin," he told Travis. At 3:30 a.m. on February 17th, a nearby resident was awakened by a loud noise. When he went to check the road, he found the car completely engulfed in flames. He called 911. Firefighters arrived within minutes. Once the fire was extinguished and the trunk was opened, they discovered a charred human body curled from the heat. The scene was both brutal and unsettling. Despite the melted license plate, it was still partially legible. The car was registered to Kandee Martin, who had been reported missing just hours earlier. The autopsy confirmed she had been shot twice, once in the torso and once in the head before being set on fire. At the scene, investigators found 6 .380 caliber shell casings, an earring, strands of hair, a large pool of blood, and a black high-heeled shoe located about 30 feet into the woods. All evidence was linked to Kandee through forensic testing. Bowman was arrested that same day. In his pocket was Kandee's wristwatch. He claimed she had given it to him in exchange for drugs. He was formally charged with murder and premeditated arson. In June 2001, a grand jury indicted him, and his trial was held in May 2002 in St. George. Prosecutor Walter Bailey presented a solid case built on physical evidence and testimony from Gadsden, Felder, and multiple witnesses. The defense argued that the witnesses had accepted plea deals and were unreliable. They also suggested the gun might have been planted by police and raised claims of racial discrimination, as Bowman was black and Kandee was white. The defense also claimed that one of the trial witnesses had confessed to the crime, although that person's identity was unclear and the claim did not succeed. On May 24, 2002, the jury deliberated for only 3 hours before finding Bowman guilty of both murder and arson. He was sentenced to death for the murder and 10 years in prison for the arson charge. James Gadsden was sentenced to 20 years for accessory after the fact and failure to report the crime. He was released on parole in under 5 years. Travis Felder received a suspended sentence of 3 years probation and never served time in prison. During his more than 2 decades on death row, Bowman filed numerous appeals at the state and federal levels. In 2005 and 2018, the South Carolina Supreme Court denied his motions. In 2020, U.S. District Judge Terry L. Wooten upheld his conviction, ruling that his constitutional rights had not been violated. In 2022, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals also rejected his appeal. Bowman was one of several inmates who sued the state over the use of the electric chair and firing squad, arguing they were unconstitutional due to the unnecessary suffering they caused. In September 2023, South Carolina announced it had acquired new lethal injection drugs. In July 2024, the state Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of all 3 execution methods. Bowman was represented by civil rights groups like the ACLU, which filed a lawsuit to lift the state's ban on media interviews and inmate publications. Federal Judge Jacqueline D. Austin dismissed the case, citing institutional security. Despite the setback, Bowman continued writing. 2 hours before his death, he released his collection, My Thoughts, a Final Attempt to Leave Something Behind, a book of poems reflecting his emotions, regrets, thoughts on incarceration, and spiritual questions. Bowman participated in Bible studies, supported fellow inmates with mental health issues, and maintained a close friendship with fellow death row inmate Richard Moore, executed on November 1, 2024. Moore taught him to read, play chess, and remain calm. Since August 2024, Bowman was placed under 24-hour death watch in what his attorneys described as inhumane conditions. Following a court ruling authorizing 6 executions between 2024 and 2025, Bowman was listed alongside Freddie Owens, Richard Moore, Brad Sigmund, Stephen Bixby, and Mikkel Mahdi. After Owens and Moore were executed, Bowman was expected to be next. His execution was initially set for December 2024, but was postponed after an appeal argued for a break in executions during the holidays. The South Carolina Supreme Court agreed and halted new death warrants until January 3, 2025. That day, the court issued Bowman's execution order. He chose lethal injection. On January 31, 2025, Marion Bowman Jr. was executed by lethal injection at Broad River Correctional Institution. He was 44 years old. His last meal included seafood, fried chicken, onion rings, banana pudding, German chocolate cake, and pineapple and cranberry juice. He was pronounced dead at 6:27 p.m., becoming the first person executed in the U.S. that year. His final statement, read by his attorneys, reaffirmed his innocence and expressed hope that Kandee Martin's family could find peace. The victim's family did not attend, but released a statement saying justice had been served. They noted that while Bowman had 24 years to watch his daughter and granddaughter grow up, Kandee had been murdered when her son was just 2 years old. Bowman's autopsy revealed he, like Moore, had received 2 doses of pentobarbital, raising new concerns about the potential for conscious suffering during execution. This information was later cited by Brad Sigmund's attorneys to try to halt his execution, arguing that toxicology reports indicated fluid in the lungs and signs consistent with conscious drowning sensations. This case is filed, but your comment could reveal new evidence, and with a like and a subscription, you'll help uncover new cases. For now, this story is filed. Choose the next case file and continue the investigation.